And it's going. It is gone. It is a home run. Yes, yes. How'd you like that transition? I'm finally getting good at this. Well, let's define good. I'm getting better at this. So, welcome everybody to the After Hours Live. Ask your favorite RCDD your questions. I appreciate everybody being here tonight. I really, really do. How was your week? This is a really, really busy week. I had 3 classes this week, and whew, man, my voice is worn. So, but I love teaching. I love teaching. I love getting feedback. Fernando, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you back. Hopefully, you contacted John. I love the feedback that I get when I'm teaching classes and stuff because, in this industry, you got to be a constant learner. You can't know everything. And I really, really appreciate students' point of view. Can I give you an example? So one of the key things in our industry is cable dressing, right? There's this whole, it's an art form. It really is. And we'll spend our time dressing a cable and people want to get it looking really nice and beautiful. And so I was teaching the class today and I kind of stopped and I asked them, I said, does anybody in today's class have any experience with a cable comb? Now, they didn't have cable combs when I was in the field dressing out cables, so I was kind of curious what their input was, and I got some really, really good feedback, enough so that I might just buy me a couple and buy me some cable and rig me up a fake telecom room and just try and make a video about it. So I'm kind of thinking about that. Let me know what you think. Is that something you would like to see? Using cable. I'm even tinkering around with the idea of maybe doing like a tool time, right? So, maybe for example, like Klein came out with a new stapler that they claim is good for high performance data cabling, right? So I'm thinking about maybe buying that and then some cable and stapling it and maybe borrowing a tester from one of my local contacts and see if there really is a difference in the testing. If that's something that you think you'd be interested in, let me know. Leave in the comments or shoot me an email. So yeah, anyways, I'm having a good week. I know one of my close friends is not George. Happy birthday, George. George is a very close friend, and he's also been on this show as an interview. He had today's his birthday, so everybody wish George a happy birthday. He didn't have a good day. Was it? I think it was yesterday, wasn't it, George? You had a car accident. He had a dash cam, and somebody came across and meet him and clipped the side of his car. And I think today he found out that they're totaling his car, so he's not having a good birthday. But anyways, as we always, you guys are already anticipating me. What are you drinking today? So as always, today, just plain water. No lemon essential oil, no soft drinks, just straight up ice water. Told you I got a sore throat from teaching. So ice water is it for me today. So George, he's drinking Diet Mountain Dew, trying to be like his daddy. Although, does your daddy drink Diet Mountain Dew or does he drink straight Mountain Dew? I don't remember. And then Shotzi said he's glad you're okay there, Mr. George. And Shotzi, of course, Diet Dr. Pepper. But he's leaving out the most important part. He's drinking it from a 2-liter jar. yeah, exactly. So Fernando, he's also drinking water. Water's good for you, especially take some advice from an old guy. Drink lots of water and also put a little lemon essential oil in it, right? Because when you get old like me, trust me, the last thing you want to do is have kidney stones. Oh, my Lord, you don't want to have them. Hey, Mark, welcome back. Mark is drinking water today. So glad to see so many people in the house tonight. It's always good to see close friends, and I consider all my audience members close friends. So not everybody drinks from 2 liters. Oh, that's funny. Shotzi asked, not everybody drinks from 2 liters? LOL. Nope. Some of us don't do that, Shotzi. No, we don't. So as always, so we got to, let me turn off this banner. This banner's driving me crazy. So as you know, I kind of started that new thing, acronym challenge. So here's today's acronym, PTZ. Do you know what a PTZ is? Right? Let me know in the chat box. Put in if you know what PTZ is. Right? And we'll talk about it here in just 1 second. This is the acronym challenge. We do an acronym challenge every weekday morning about 8:10ish or so. And of course, I got to do my public service announcement, right? Help control the acronym population. Have your acronym spayed or neutered. Let's limit these things. Let's get this industry to quit using so many acronyms, right? So what is PTZ? Does anybody know? Right? It does have to do with a camera. Oh, very good, Mark. Mark, yes. Pan, tilt, zoom. Very good, Mark. Mark, you get 10,000 points for today's class. Point. Of course, the points are worthless. You're not worth anything, but hey, you got 10,000 points. Good job. So it stands for pan, tilt, zoom. Pan, tilt, zoom. What does that mean? That means you have a camera that you can control it. You can pan it side to side. You can tilt it up and down, and you can zoom in and zoom out. That's what that means. Pan, tilt, zoom. Pan, tilt, zoom. So again, make sure you put your questions in the question box, right? Because we do answer questions. I do have some questions today, but I want to talk about one right out of the gate, right? And I didn't get this question until 4:50 p.m. today. I was just happened to check and saw it. And this is a question from Hassam in Dubai. Hassam, I'm not answering your question tonight. I'm researching it because you asked some really great questions, But your questions are really regional specific. You're asking about the Middle East. And I have lots of experience in America. So I'm reaching out to some friends of mine to get you your answer. So I will answer your questions next Thursday night, just so you know that. Let me get that one right out of the gate. All right. So let's go through the questions we have. Right. So we did our drink challenge. We did our acronym challenge. So I believe we're up to speed. Oh, hey, did you guys watch the BS with Todd show today? He had Blake on there and he has brother Sam on there. Great show, guys. Great show. I watched it after the class. I didn't get to watch it during live when you actually did it. Great. So I was relating to everything you were saying about the old cable guy stuff because I am, after all, an old cable guy, right? So I was really, really digging that show today. If you have the time, check out BS with Todd. He works for Brother Solutions. He does a bi-weekly thing on Thursdays. Check him out. Blake, he had some really exciting news. I'm interviewing him tomorrow for Monday's show. So make sure you pay attention on Monday's show for some exciting news that they've got going on there, right? So let's talk about some of the questions that I got submitted during this week, right? So the first question, safety is priority. Putting on my safety glasses so that the words don't jump off the page and hit me in the eye, right? Oh, hey, Hassam, thank you for coming in. I was wondering if you're going to be here tonight. So you asked some really good questions. I want to get you some good, thorough, complete answers. So the first question was from Dallas, and it's from a guy named John. Or is it from John and a guy named Dallas? Don't know. And he says, Chuck, I'm installing a 100-pair cable backbone from the 7th floor of a customer's office down to the basement. In the closets, there are existing D-rings. Can I attach to them for support? Okay, so if one thing I want my audience member to know, try to give me as much detail in the question as you can. You can't give me too much detail because that's going to really help me hone in that answer for you. So some things that John didn't tell me is he didn't tell me, well, was it riser rated cable or plenum rated cable? Because that makes a difference in the weight. Now, before I get too much further, my answer right out of the gate is it's probably not a good idea to attach to D-rings, especially when you're going from 7th floor all the way down to the basement. A 100-pair cable weighs roughly about 400 pounds per 1,000 feet, give or take. It depends on whether it's plenum or riser rated and who the manufacturer and if it's 22 gauge or whatever. There's a lot of factors in there, but ballpark figure, 400 pounds. So you do the math, right? 400 pounds, right? 7 floors. That's a lot of weight. So I don't know. I don't know if I could recommend using D-rings. Matter of fact, I'm going to make a point. I'm going to make a stand. Don't use the D-rings. And for a couple of reasons. One, you didn't install the D-rings. You should be using your own materials to support your stuff. Two, I don't think that the D-rings will support that weight. I don't, because see, the D-rings could be the aluminum ones or they could be the plastic ones. Mark has some great input as well. He asked, are those D-rings populate? That's a great point, Mark, because a 100 pair cable, the outside diameter, I want to say, I know it's bigger than a 1/2 inch. I want to say it's about 0.6 OD. Again, give or take, on some factors and stuff. So it may not even fit in those D-rings. So I'd be concerned if I use those D-rings, or one of my technicians used those D-rings. I would be really concerned about the D-rings breaking, especially if they're the plastic ones. And two, you don't know what kind of screw that they used to put them in the wall, right? I mean, are the D-rings attached to the gypsum board, or are they attached to a piece of plywood? They're supposed to be attached to plywood, but they may not be, right? So it may pull those screws out. So the only way that you can guarantee that your cable's not going to issues is if you install your own support structure. So I don't know if I would use those D-rings. Now, with that being said, how would I support them? Now, my preferred method is, and again, if I have a customer willing to pay for this, is on every floor, I would put a section of ladder rack mounted to the wall, right, with some standoffs, and then I would attach my 100 pair cable at least 3 times on that wall going up the wall. That way I know that it's good, it's solid, it's not going anywhere. Another method that you can use some Kindorf, right? You can attach some Kindorf to the wall, and then you can strap and lace to that. Although I like the ladder rack because, again, remember, when it comes to communications, it's everything about thinking about the future, right? Today, you're putting in that 100 pair cable. What about next week? What about next month? Right? You got to think about that stuff. And there are some other options. There's some straps. There's some wire mesh systems that you can use. Again, I would not use those D-rings, period. I would just stay away from them. And again, make sure that you do it a minimum of 3 times per floor, right? So that was a great question, Mr. John. I hope that you send more great questions. And if you happen to take pictures of it, take some pictures and send it to me so I can put it in a future show and we can show people and relate to the things that are going on, right? So the next question comes from Tampa, and this is from Ron. And it says, Chuck, I need help. I'm running some cables in a warehouse. How can I mount my J-hooks to the red iron? So Ron must be relatively new because this is not anything new or technology advanced. You can use so for example, Erico sells the clamps that clamp onto the beams, and then you can screw your J-hooks to them. You can even buy the J-hooks with those clamps already on them. Oh, Mark's got some more great ideas. Man, Mark, I need to bring you on as a guest. I do. And he said he's even seen wire basket used as well. You talking about mounted vertically to the wall? Is that what you mean, Mark? That's actually a pretty good idea too. You can also buy the hammer-on beam clamps, and then there's other clamps that you can put on there too. I would just make sure that you put them on there securely. If, for example, and that's all assuming that you have access and you can get to this red iron, because red iron is generally going to be like in a steel building or a warehouse type building. And so that red iron is going to be pretty high up there. It's going to be, 18, 20, 22 feet. So you might need a personnel lift, right? So make sure that you watch the previous show because I talked about some stuff with personnel lift. If you don't want to rent a personnel lift, and I just learned this is the beautiful thing about our industry. A few months back, I was on the Low Voltage Nation Slack channel, and somebody talked about how to mount cables to red iron. And somebody proposed that you use magnetic J-hooks. And at first I thought that was a joke, but I researched that there sure is a thing called magnetic J-hooks, and they can support up to 200 pounds, although they say the working load capacity is 100 pounds. So with that, you can use a pole and just, you don't even need a lift, save some money on the job. So you do have options. Right? The magnets won't affect the performance of the cable plant either. So that's always a good thing there too. Right? So the next question comes from, hey, Mark, shoot me a message on LinkedIn and let's come up with some subject and have you on as a guest. I would love to have you on as a guest. So the next question is from West Virginia, and this is from Rod. Rod says, are there any tips for mounting a 19-inch relay rack to the floor? Now, again, is it a concrete floor or is it a raised floor? More information, the better off I can answer your question. So I'm just going to assume it's a concrete floor. So when you put your rack together and you got it all tightened up and everything, you're going to want to bolt it to the ground with drop-in anchors. I generally used to use 3/8-inch drop-in anchors because they seem to do the best, because you want to make sure that the fender washers are big enough that they hold that base in. But the manufacturers, Chatsworth and all the other ones who make those ladder racks, they make the floor anchor kits for them. So that's always an option as well. Other things you want to make sure that you do is make sure exactly drop-in anchors, Mark. You want to make sure that that rack is far enough away from the back wall. Now, how do you know how far away? Well, code tells us 36 inches. 36 inches behind all active pieces of equipment. Now, the problem is you don't know what kind of equipment is going to be installed inside that rack. You just don't know. So you can either contact the customer and then ask them what equipment is in there and then look up the dimensions and do the math. I suggest if you do that, you do your math twice. Check it and measure twice, drill once, right? There's a Chuckism for you. Or go to 4 feet, right? So 4 feet will pretty much generally take care, because you don't want to mount it at 3 feet and then have them put in a big piece of equipment and then realize, you don't have 36 inches. Because then the inspector is going to get mad at you and they're going to make you move that rack. Also, don't forget to bond that rack to a ground, right? Make sure you scratch the paint. You get good metal-to-metal contact. And here's a tip for you. Here's pro tip number 1 for the day. And I actually just learned this because I used to use a 6-foot level when I would install my racks. Because what I do is I install the rack, put the 6-foot level on it, and then that way I can guarantee that the rack was actually straight up, right? A student asked me this question during class, and I had to go look it up. So I went to the Chatsworth page. Thank you, Chatsworth, for having such a great page. And I looked at the installation instructions for one of their racks, and they recommend to use a carpenter square. And I was like, that's a great idea, a carpenter square. You put one end of the carpenter square on the ground, and then the other end goes up against the rack, and then that way you know that the rack is perpendicular to the floor. So I thought that was a great idea. So that answers your question. If it's not direct on floor, shoot me another message and let me know. Again, more information, the better. So the next question comes from California, and this is from Mark. And so Mark says, I'm working in a small building that has a crawl space underneath of the building. Can that be considered a confined space? My answer to that is potentially. I would want to treat it as a confined space. It's better to be too safe than not safe enough, right? Now think about that. Now, what does a confined space really mean? A confined space means you can bodily get into it. It means that there's limited means of ingress and egress. And then there's a third requirement to what makes a confined space. And it's actually, I'm drawing a blank at the moment. I'll think of it the minute I hit end broadcast. I'll go, oh, that's it. That's what I meant. If anybody remembers what that third thing is, put it in the chat box. I just can't seem to remember what it is. So it can be considered a confined space. So here's some tips for you if you're going to be working, because I've done a lot of work underneath buildings, a lot of work underneath trailers, construction trailers. I've done a lot of work underneath the floor. Wear appropriate PPE. Wear appropriate personal protective equipment. That's going to mean a helmet or a bump cap. That's going to mean safety glasses. That's going to mean you might want to wear leather gloves, because you don't know what's underneath there, especially trailers. I cut my hand really bad one time underneath the trailer running some cable. I had to get stitches. So leather gloves, absolutely want to make sure that you wear that. And then another good piece of advice is don't wear Dockers. Wear a good pair of jeans. Right? Oh, let me phrase that. Not a good pair of jeans, a good thick pair of jeans. You don't wear your good best Sunday jeans underneath there, but jeans are thicker, so they're going to be a little bit more protection than just a pair of Dockers or maybe uniform pants. So wear some good pants. And speaking of pants, you might want to wear some knee pads, right? Wear some knee pads. And I also suggest that if you're going to be underneath there, that you have some kind of a good light source. Get a good light that attaches to your forehead or to the bump cap. That way your hands are free, because if you got a flashlight and thank you, Shotzi. Shotzi comes with the winner, 10,000 points for Mr. Shotzi. The third component is the area is not designed for continuous occupancy. My audience comes through again. Thank you, Shotzi. So yeah, those are the 3 things that you need to have in order to be a confined space. So yeah, make sure that you wear some kind of a light, and make sure your batteries are new or freshly charged and have backups. 2 is 1, 1 is none. Always carry spare batteries. Always wear spare batteries. So then the next thing you do is you want to make sure that you understand where the other things are going to be, like the gas lines and electric lines. And you want to be super, super careful with that. And so when you're underneath that way you don't accidentally step on something and break something and cause to have another trade to come out and fix it. And now you got to pay for that repair. So be super careful. Take your time when you're underneath there. It's not a speed contest. It's not a speed contest, right? And that dust mask is going to be super, super important. I'm also going to tell you that you really need to make sure that you pay attention for rodents and snakes, right? Because they love living in those kinds of places. Because you don't want to put your hand on a snake and then have that kind of slither away or worse yet, come back and snap at you and bite you. So make sure you pay attention. And the thing is to be proactive, right? So when you're underneath it, you got your good light on, watch for droppings. Watch for rat droppings and stuff like that, because that'll alert you to the presence that there might be rats or mice down there. And that's also going to help you too, because if you're putting a cable or something like that, that's going to tell you, well, maybe I need to change my cable type because there's a presence of rodents. You know, I was once told, and I don't know if this is true or not, I got to contact somebody, one of the cable manufacturers. I was once told by a student that the reason that mice and rats love to chew through outside plant cable is because one of the components, one of the chemical components of the jacket, the polyethylene jacket, has a very close signature to almonds or almond oil, and that attracts them. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm going to have to research that. Maybe I'll have to do it. I'll have to find somebody who works for Burktech or one of the cable companies and have them on and do an interview. That sounds like a winner to me. But yeah, they have a tendency to chew through that outside plant stuff, right? So absolutely. So then the next question, and actually this is the last question that I had. So again, if you have a question, make sure you put it in the comment box. So you got about 5 minutes or so before, maybe not even 5 minutes. So this one is coming from Detroit, and it's coming from Terry. Terry says, I am a certified Bixby technician in Michigan, and I am, Chuck has bad handwriting. I am tired of the cold weather, and I want to move to farm, probably like Georgia or Florida. I know you live in Florida. I want to go where it's warm. How can I find good jobs there? Okay. So now here's the thing. Before you start looking for jobs, the first thing you want to narrow down is the potential places you want to live, because looking for a job is really the second step. You want to do the first step. You want to look at the areas. So you got to figure out, do you want to live in a tier 1 city, a tier 2 city, or tier 3 city? And the only difference between those cities is the population and the growth. For example, New York City would be a tier 1 city. Tampa, I believe, is classified as a tier 3 city. It's a city, but it doesn't have the population density and the sprawl that like New York does. Because the bigger the city, the more opportunities, the more cable companies there are. So while you're looking at this location, you now want to look at, okay, what is the salary range for that area? How much is it? What's the cost of living? What does a house cost? And you can use any one of the job search web pages like Indeed or anything like that to do salary searches for city stuff and find that information, right? So let's say that you narrowed it down to 1 or 2 cities and you're ready to go. So now what do you do? So now what you want to do is you want to do research on companies in that area, right? You want to do research on companies in their area. And then once you narrow it down, you want to go to and look at those companies' web pages, right? Do they have a really detailed web page? Is it really in depth and have stuff, or is it, a web page? It's literally got like 2 pages on it. It was done by GoDaddy, and they use one of the templates. Well, okay, that doesn't mean that that's not a good company to work for, but that's a good indication of of whether or not what kind of tent. So Mark says, Mark says he's in desperate need of some techs in Chicago. That's not the first time I've heard that in the last 6 months, Mark. I heard that a lot. There's a lot of people right now looking for good technicians, but Mark points out it's not warm there. So yes, I know I've taught in Chicago. I love going to Chicago. Just don't like being there in the wintertime. Just saying, I'm a Florida boy, like being in Florida. So yeah, look at the webpage, look how depth it is. And then another thing that you want to do is go to LinkedIn and look up that company, research that company. When you go to LinkedIn, you can actually see who works for that company, right? And then find someone who's working for that company who has the same position you're looking for or close to it. And then just reach out to them and shoot them a message and say, hey, I'm looking to move in the area. Is XYZ company a good company to work for? Now, keep in mind, they may or may not answer you for many different reasons. They may not answer you because you're hitting them out of the blue and they don't know you, or they may not answer you because they don't get on LinkedIn but once every 6 weeks. Not everybody's a LinkedIn-holic like Chuck is. Chuck's always on LinkedIn. But yeah, reach out to them and ask them and stuff. You can get some good information that way. Some really, really good information. And then what I would really do is another thing you can do is you can access, there's this thing called Dun & Bradstreet. Dun & Bradstreet's like the credit report for companies. So you can actually look up their Dun & Bradstreet. Glassdoor is another good example. Thank you, Mark. And look up to see if there's any pending litigation against them, stuff like that. Because you want to know what is the company culture and what kind of problems are they running into, right? Because a lot of people don't think about this. When you're going on a job interview, not only are they interviewing you to see if you're a good fit, you should be interviewing them. Are they a good fit for you? Do their values match your values? Because if you get a job and you find out that they're not your values, then that could be a potential, cause you problems 6 months, 12 months down the road. I'll give you an example. So my day job, and for those who know me, know the company I work for during the day. I don't broadcast it in the podcast, but I work for a large connectivity manufacturer. And when I got hired on 10 years ago, when I got flown out to do the job interview, they're going to have me interview with like 3 or 4 different people. So I asked the HR lady, can you please tell me the names of the people that I'm interviewing with? So she gave me the name and I looked them up on LinkedIn and I got a good feel for them. So that way, when I was sitting in front of them, like for example, one of the guys that I was interviewing with, he had a master's degree. Well, I had just finished my master's degree. So after we did the whole, talking about communications, I kind of asked him, I said, well, let me ask you this. Has a master's degree helped accelerate your career within the company? So remember, you're interviewing the company as much as the company is interviewing you. So make sure that you do that. And you can do that by doing good, Glassdoor or Dun & Bradstreet stuff. So, and then the last thing I'll touch base on is, please, because you didn't give me any history here. So I don't know if it's just you or you and a wife or you and a family, because moving with a family is way more complex than just you moving by yourself. And you want it to be a little more cautious before you decide that kind of a move. So make sure you do your due diligence and your good research. All right, because there's a lot of factors that go on with that. A lot of questions. So let's see here. So Fernando has a question. He says, I do have a question. Someone was the argument of not dressing the cable in the entire path. Is it necessary just at the end? I said it was necessary to avoid noise bundles of cables. Okay. So there's no real clear answer on that. Even with your higher performance cable, here's the thing. When you bundle cable, and Fernando, do you use that cable comb when you dress cable? Let me know. When you're dressing cable, one of the reasons that we limit the dressing the cable to just the closet is because it's very labor intensive. It takes a lot of time, a lot of diligence. And we actually just talked about this. One of John's students was asking about cable dressing in a couple shows back. So it's really a lot of labor involved. Now, when you start talking about dressing the cable the entire length of the runs, that's a lot of labor. Now, some people will tell you that you want to randomize the cables in the cable tray. You want to lay them in there randomly so no 2 cables lay next to each other for long periods. Yeah, Well, the true statement was causing interference when Cat 6A first came out, but the cable manufacturers quickly found a way to construct the cables to mitigate those issues, like discontinuous isolation wraps, fluted jacket designs, and stuff like that. They found lots of different ways to mitigate this. So you can go back to dressing the cable if you so desire, right? Oh, that's my watch. I don't know why my watch is going off. I thought I'd cleared that. To be honest, I hated jobs where they wanted the cables dressed all the way down the hallways, especially if it's going to be concealed, right? I did a project for a call center one time where they did basket tray, but they didn't put in the ceiling so you can see the, all the ceiling structures, and they painted everything all one color. I understand why that one wanted to be dressed, because everybody saw the cable every day of the week. But you can even get around that. You can put the basket trays have the metal plates that you can put on the bottom of them so you can't see up into them. So my preference is to only dress in the closet. But if you have the time and you want to dress the entire thing, absolutely go ahead and do it. There's really no performance advantage there. None, or there's some, but it's negligible. Just the key is it a competitive bid scenario? And will you get knocked out of the work if you put in the labor to dress the cable all the way down? I hope that answers your question, Fernando. So John says, one of my students had a question. Should we judge mental or look down at the professional that has certificates like RCDD with no hands experience? Oh, wow. John, that is a great question. My answer is no. You really shouldn't look down on them, and you shouldn't judge them. All right. We should never look down on anybody. Everybody's path, everybody's walk through life is a little different. Now, if I'm given the opportunity to pick one of two RCDDs to come work for me, one came up through the field and has an RCDD. The other is book smart and has an RCDD, and everything else is equal. They want the same salary range. They got the same amount of experience. I will probably pick the person with the field experience. But I wouldn't necessarily rule out, but we always know everything's never equal, right, John? So maybe the person who doesn't have the field experience is really smart. Because I've worked with some people who had their certifications but never pulled cable. And they're like, I'll give you an example. One of my former bosses, I mentioned him in the past, he's retired now, but he came into the communications industry and had no experience in communications. And by the time I started working for him, he had about 7 to 10 years. So he's starting to learn some stuff, but he had a lot of great business experience. And I consider him to this day one of my mentors. So never look down on anybody because their path is a little different than ours. But always keep in mind, and when it comes to business decision, there is some value in street credit. So there you go. So let's see. What does Mark say here? Mark says it would be harder to be effective, but possible. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Here's a benefit of coming from the field. And this is the last thing, and I'll sign out for the day. Here's the last thing. If somebody comes up from the field and they're going to be managing people from the field, well, they're going to know the tricks that the people from the field are going to try to pull on them, right? Oh, well, we couldn't pull the cable in because of blah, blah, blah. And then the project manager says, bull, I've been there, I've done that. You can do that. Somebody who doesn't have that field experience, they might be able to pull the wool over their eyes somewhat until they learn that lesson. So there is that thing there, but good people are good people. They'll excel it no matter whether they have the field experience or not. And again, I would never look down on anybody whether they have a certification, because I have come across people who have technician certificates that didn't know their head from a hole in the ground. And I have other people who don't have their technician certificates who could run circles around field experience, 25 plus year RCDDs. Judge everybody on their own merits. Don't judge. The certification is just one thing to judge by. I like to teach in parables, right? You all know this. I have dogs. I have 2 German Shepherds, right? So I'm really good at reading my dog's body language. So if my dog comes at me and their ears are up and it's showing me its teeth, does that mean that dog is happy? Maybe not. What's the tail doing? What's the hair doing on its back? You got to take in the whole entire thing to make a judgment. Don't just judge on one thing. Don't just judge on one thing. So I hope that answers your question, John, and tell your students, keep the good questions coming. And I hope one day to get to meet them when I get to go out to California and see that. So that's it for today's show. We're a little bit over 30 minutes. So until next week, everybody, be safe and make sure you these questions, and check out my webpage and look at my podcast. Give me thumbs up and I just breached 200. So I'm trying to build that up. So until next week, everybody, be safe.